I was standing outside the pawn shop in Hickory Falls, clutching my grandpa's old jazz guitar, the one thing I swore I'd never sell. A strange man blocked the door. "Do you know Body and Soul, the 7-chord tritone rearm?" My hand shook, but I nodded. He smiled. "If it's you, apartment 3 on Arrow Street and a safe deposit box at First River Bank are waiting." All those years my family ignored me. It turns out everything started with a jazz tune they tried to hide. My name is Aspen Rodriguez. I am 30 years old, and I was counting the change on my kitchen counter. It was not a hopeful pile. A few quarters, mostly dimes, and a depressing amount of pennies. It added up to $3.41. Enough for 1 pack of instant ramen from the corner store, maybe 2 if I bought the cheap brand that tasted like salt and cardboard. I opened the refrigerator, a useless habit. The little light flickered, illuminating the same desolate landscape as yesterday. Half a stick of unsalted butter, a single lemon going soft at one end, and a jar of mustard. The freezer was just ice buildup. The hunger was a dull, constant ache in my stomach, a cold companion that had moved in about 3 weeks ago. My unemployment benefits, the last meager paycheck from Meridian Ortho Labs, were gone. The restructuring had taken my mid-level technician job and given it to an algorithm, or perhaps just someone cheaper. The final check had evaporated against the rent for this damp apartment. The next check was not coming. This was it, the bottom. My eyes went to the corner of the room. It was leaning against the wall in its hard-shell case, the brown leatherette worn smooth at the edges. My grandfather's Gibson L5. It was the only thing of value I owned, and the only thing I had ever refused to value in terms of money. It was his smell. Tobacco and old wood. It was his hands. The calluses mapping out chords I still struggled to voice. I had promised myself I would never sell it. I would starve before I sold it. But starvation was no longer an abstract concept. It was $3.41 on the counter. I opened the case. The guitar gleamed. A deep sunburst finish. It was beautiful, heavy with history and craftsmanship. I picked up my last polishing cloth and began to wipe down the body. Slow, methodical circles. I cleaned the fretboard, buffed the headstock. I was polishing it for the pawn shop. The thought felt like swallowing glass. This was the end of the line. I was breaking the one promise I had made to him, to myself. My phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the loose change. I looked at the screen, the family group chat. A picture popped up from my sister, Amber. It was a screenshot of her online boutique's sales dashboard, a graph pointing sharply upwards. The caption read, "Killed it this month. Over 5 figures, who's the boss?" I stared at the image. 5 figures. I needed $5 before I could even process the bitterness. Another message came in, this time from my mother, Darlene. "Aspen honey, can you pick up Mason from soccer practice at 4? I have my book club and Amber is busy with her inventory." It was not a question. It was a directive. It was always a directive. I was the designated helper, the reliable, unemployed daughter who obviously had nothing better to do than facilitate their busy, successful lives. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I typed, erased, typed again. "I can't today. I'm sorry." Amber's reply was instant. "Why not? You are not busy." My stomach cramped, a mix of hunger and anger. I typed the truth before I could stop myself. "I'm having a really hard time right now. I lost the job. Remember, I have no money left. I am literally trying to figure out how to eat tonight." I sent it. The vulnerability hung in the air, electric and sickening. The little bubbles appeared, then they stopped. The word "read" appeared under my message, from Amber, from Darlene, and then nothing. The silence from them was louder than any rejection. It was confirmation. I was only useful when I was providing something. My need, my failure, was invisible, or worse, an inconvenience. I put the phone down. The last thread of hope that I could borrow $20, just to get through the week, snapped. I closed the guitar case. The clasps clicked shut, sounding final, like a coffin closing. The walk to Hickory Falls Pawn and Loan was only 6 blocks, but it felt like a marathon of shame. I carried the L5. Its weight was familiar, but today it felt like an anchor. Every person I passed felt like they knew. They knew I was a failure. They knew I was selling the last piece of my grandfather. The bell above the pawn shop door jingled weakly. The shop smelled of dust, old electronics, and stale cigars. A man with a graying ponytail and small, shrewd eyes looked up from a disorganized counter. "Help you." I placed the heavy case on the counter. My voice was barely a whisper. "I need to sell this." He opened it. His bored expression flickered. It was a subtle shift, just a widening of the eyes, but I caught it. He knew exactly what this was. He picked it up, running his hands over it with a practiced air of skepticism. "Gibson L5, he said. "Old one. 1950s maybe? 1954, I said, my voice tight. "All original hardware." He turned it over, squinting. "Got a hairline crack here by the neck joint. See that? That kills the collector value." I knew about the crack. Grandpa called it a laugh line. It had been repaired by a master luthier in St. Louis 30 years ago. It did not affect the tone. "It's stable," I said. "The serial number is rare. It's from the first run of that specific inlay." He was trying to lowball me, but his eyes kept darting to that serial number. He was excited. He was trying to hide it. "These are hard to move," he sighed, putting it down. "Jazz boxes. Nobody plays this stuff anymore. Everyone wants a Strat or a Tele." He tapped his calculator. "Best I can do is $400 for a guitar worth $10,000, maybe more." "That's insulting," I said, my dignity flaring up. "Look, lady, it's a niche item with damage. $450, that's my final offer. Take it or leave it." I looked at the $450 he was implying. It was rent. It was groceries for months. It was survival. I was about to nod. I was about to say yes. My stomach ached. "She knows it's a 54. The voice came from behind me. It was deep, quiet, and steady. I turned. A man in a simple brown wool coat was standing by the amplifiers. He looked to be in his late 60s, with kind eyes and a face that looked like it had done a lot of listening. The pawnbroker's face soured. "This is a private transaction. She also knows that crack is a surface check, not a joint failure," the man continued, walking closer. He looked at me, ignoring the owner. "And she knows that serial number means it has the Alnico 5 pickups, not the P90s. He looked at me directly. His gaze was intense. "You know jazz?" Then, I was startled. Yes, my grandfather taught me." "Did he teach you body and soul?" I nodded. "Of course." "The rearm," he pushed, his voice dropping slightly. "The one with the tritone substitution on the bridge." My heart stopped. It was not just a question, it was a code. Grandpa Gus's signature. He taught it to me when I was 15, making me practice the bizarre, dissonant voicing until my fingers bled. He said it was the note that separates the listeners from the players. "The flat 9 voicing on the dominant," I replied, my voice shaking. The pawnbroker was lost. "Hey, are you buying something or not?" The man in the brown coat pointed to an old amplifier. "Plug it in. Play it." "I'm not doing a show," the broker snapped. "She plays it," the man said, pulling a thick wallet from his coat. He took out 5 $100 bills and placed them on the counter. "That's for your time. She plays. Now." The broker looked at the money, then at me. He shrugged and pointed to a dusty Fender Twin. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely get the guitar out of the case. I plugged in the cable. The amp hummed to life. I stood there, the familiar weight of the L5 against my body. I looked at the man. He nodded slowly. I took a breath and started. I played the intro to Body and Soul. My fingers were stiff from the cold and lack of practice, but they remembered. The muscle memory was deeper than the hunger. The pawn shop faded away. The smell of dust disappeared. There was only the sound, that warm, hollow body tone that sounded like my grandfather's voice. I got to the bridge. The difficult part. I played the progression, and then I did it. I dropped in the substitution, the dissonant, beautiful, aching chord that shouldn't work, but did, the tritone sub. I played through the rest of the verse, and just as I was about to hit the final resolving note, the man held up his hand. That's it. I stopped. The chord hung in the air. That's how he ended the phrase, the man said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at me, and his eyes were kind. You're Gus's girl, aren't you? He was my grandfather, I managed. My name is Ralph Delaney, he said, extending a hand. I own the Riverside Club. Gus and I. We were best friends for 40 years. The pawnbroker, seeing his sale evaporate, grumbled. So, you buying the guitar or not? She's not selling it, Ralph said, his voice firm. He turned back to me. Gus made me promise. He said one day, you'd be at the end of your rope. He said you'd show up here, with this guitar. He said you'd be the only one who knew that chord. My mind was spinning. Knew what? Ralph reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with dark red wax. It was heavy, old-fashioned. He gave me this 8 years ago, right before he passed, Ralph said. My instructions were specific. If a young woman matching your description ever tried to sell this specific L5, I was to ask her to play that song. If she played it correctly, if she knew the substitution, I was to give her this. He handed me the envelope. My name, Aspen Rodriguez, was written on the front in my grandfather's familiar, elegant script. I broke the wax seal. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost tore the paper. Inside, there was a single, heavy skeleton key. There was a folded piece of stationery. And there was a small, brass key for a safe deposit box. I unfolded the note. My dearest Aspen, it read, if you are reading this, you found your way. I told you the music would protect you. Do not sell the guitar. It's your compass. The large key is for the apartment at number 3 Arrow Street, the old guest house. The rent is paid. The small key is for box 412 at First River Bank. Go there, and remember what I taught you. When you hear jazz like it's your own blood flowing, you will know the way home. I read it twice. Arrow Street, First River Bank. I looked up at Ralph. He was smiling, a sad, proud smile. I looked at the pawnbroker. He was staring at the $500 on his counter. I looked at the guitar in my hands. I put the keys and the note into my pocket. I began to unplug the guitar. Hey, the broker said, what about my money? That was for my time, Ralph said, gesturing to the cash. Keep it. I carefully placed the Gibson L5 back in its case. I closed the clasps, but this time, the sound was different. It was not an ending. It felt like a lock opening. I was still hungry. I still had only $3.41 to my name. I was still unemployed, and my family still thought I was a ghost. But as I picked up the case, I stood up straight. I walked out of that pawn shop, past Ralph Delaney, who held the door open for me. The cold Missouri air hit my face, but I did not feel it. My heart was pounding, a hot, driving rhythm in my chest. I was starving, but I felt more alive than I had in years. I had a key, I had a note, and I had my grandfather's guitar. I was not selling my past. I was walking toward my future. Arrow Street was on the other side of the tracks, a part of Hickory Falls that had resisted the urge to modernize. The buildings were old brick, the sidewalks uneven. Number 3 was a guest house set behind a larger, slightly decaying Victorian, accessible by a narrow wooden staircase that ran up the building's exterior. It felt hidden. The guitar case was still heavy, a counterweight to the lightness in my head from the lack of food. The hunger was a low thrum beneath the frantic energy of Ralph's revelation. I climbed the stairs, my steps echoing in the narrow alley. The door to number 3 was painted a faded green, the paint peeling. I put the heavy, old-fashioned skeleton key into the lock. I expected resistance. I expected to have to jiggle it. to fight a lock seized by rust and neglect. It turned instantly, smoothly, the tumblers clicking with a well-oiled precision. My breath caught. The lock was not old. It was not unused. I pushed the door open. A cloud of dust motes danced in the single beam of afternoon light from a grimy window. The air was thick, not with rot, but with the preserved scent of the past. It smelled of old wood, lemon oil, the faint, sweet smell of pipe tobacco, and something else. A dry, papery scent, like a library. It was one large room, a garret apartment, just as the note said, a single bed, neatly made, covered in a dusty canvas dropcloth, an armchair, a small kitchenette, the appliances a dull avocado green, and a large, dark wood desk. But my eyes were drawn to the walls. They were covered in black and white photographs, professionally framed. My grandfather, Gus Whitman, not the old man I knew, but a sharp, intense man in his 30s. Gus playing in a smoky club in St. Louis, his eyes closed, lost in the music, the L5 in his hands. Gus laughing with a saxophone player I did not recognize. Gus leaning against a vintage car, looking like a movie star. The 70s, a life I knew nothing about. Next to a photo of him signing a piece of paper, a receipt was tacked to the wall. It was a statement from First River Bank, dated 3 months ago. The account was in the name of G. Whitman, my grandfather, but he had been dead for 8 years. Someone was keeping this place alive. Someone was paying the bills. Ralph, I assumed, a friend, maintaining a shrine. I walked to the desk. On top sat a vintage reel-to-reel tape recorder. Next to it, a cardboard box filled with tapes. The label on the box was written in my grandfather's hand, Standards Private Takes. My fingers tingled. I opened the top desk drawer. It was not filled with junk. It was organized. Pens, paper clips, and a small, leather-bound notebook. I opened it. The first page had a logo embossed in the leather. Crawford Ames, LLP, Attorneys at Law. Inside, my grandfather's script filled the pages, notes on music, on chords, and then lists, names, dates. Halfway through, I saw a notation, Contingent Beneficiary A.R. Aspen Rodriguez. My heart was doing a strange, uneven rhythm against my ribs, contingent on what I dug deeper into the drawer. Underneath a stack of blank sheet music, I found a stapled sheaf of papers. It was a draft, covered in handwritten notes. The top page was typed, Codicil to the Last Will and Testament of Gustav Whitman. Draft, February 2016. 2016, just 2 years before he died. I scanned the dense legal language. My eyes snagged on a paragraph. In the event my primary beneficiary fails to meet the conditions set forth, the estate shall pass to the contingent beneficiary, provided she can demonstrate an innate and specific understanding of my musical signature. The test shall be to identify and perform the tritone substitution within the bridge of body and soul, the specific voicing of which is known only to her and to my executor. This was it, the test, the one I had just passed in the pawn shop. It was not a whim. It was a legal document, but it said contingent. Who was the primary beneficiary I kept searching? In the back of the drawer, I found a file folder. It was thin, containing only receipts. They were payment confirmations, recurring transfers, a monthly payment to the Sunday afternoon music fund at the Riverside Club. The sender was listed as G. Whitman. He had been funding the music at Ralph's club, silently, for years, even after his death. The money was still flowing from that bank account. I closed the drawer, my mind spinning. He had built a fortress, a secret life, a secret test, a secret fund. I looked around the room again, and my eyes landed on something that did not fit. On the small nightstand by the bed, there was a single, modern photograph in a cheap frame. I picked it up. My stomach dropped. It was me. I was 12 years old, skinny, with a gap in my teeth, holding the L5 guitar in my backyard. I was wearing my favorite striped t-shirt. I remembered that day. My mother had been angry. yelling at me to stop making that noise and to come inside and help with dinner. I turned the photo over. Nothing. I stared at it. It was not a selfie. It was not a posed portrait. It was candid. The angle. It was taken from slightly above, from a window. I knew that view. I knew the way the oak tree branch framed the shot. It was taken from my mother's bedroom window. Why was this picture here? How did it get from my mother's house to my grandfather's secret apartment? The implication was cold and heavy. My mother, Darlene, knew about this place. She had been here. My hands were shaking again. I went back to the desk. Possessed. I started pulling everything out. Drawers, folders. I ran my hands under the lip of the desk, searching, under the main desk blotter. My fingers brushed a single, folded piece of paper. It was not in the file. It was hidden. I unfolded it. It was a printed email. An email to my mother. From Mark Crawford, Esquire, Crawford Ames, LLP. To Darlene Rodriguez gmail.com. Date, October 14th, 2016. Subject, Estate of Gustav Whitman, Certified Packet. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, this email is to confirm that you signed for and received the certified mail packet containing the final testamentary documents of your father, Gustav Whitman, on October 12, 2016. As discussed, these documents detail his wishes and the specific unorthodox conditions of his will. As you are the designated point of contact, please ensure these documents are presented to the potential primary beneficiary without delay. We await your confirmation that this has been completed. 8 years ago, right after the funeral, she signed for it. My mother, she had the will. She knew about the conditions. She knew about the test. She had received the will, and then she had nothing. She said he left nothing. She told me he was broke, that his music was just a hobby that never paid. She told me the L5 was the only thing of value he had left. She had hidden it. She had buried it. I sank into the dusty armchair, the email crushed in my hand. All those years. All the times I had asked for help, all the read receipts, all the demands to babysit, to run errands, to be the family mule. All the while, she was sitting on this, a will, a test, my test. She had left me to fail, to flounder, to starve, to the point where I was forced to sell the one thing that was the key to my own salvation. She had not just ignored me. She had actively, deliberately erased my future. I felt a cold, sharp anger I had never known. It was pure, and it burned away the hunger in my stomach. I looked around the room again, my eyes scanning for anything else. Under the bed, I knelt, pulling back the canvas drop cloth. A metal case was tucked against the wall. Not a guitar case. It was a silver, metal briefcase, like something from a spy movie. It had a heavy-duty combination lock and a lead seal, the kind you have to cut, looped through the handle. A small secondary keyhole was visible. It was locked, sealed. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that the small brass key in my pocket, the key from the safe deposit box, would open it. My phone vibrated in my pocket. The sound was obscene in the silent, dusty room. I pulled it out. A new message from Amber. Seriously, where are you? Aunt Carol's birthday is tonight. You're bringing the big green salad. Remember the one with the walnuts? Don't be late. I stared at the words, the banality of it, the walnuts. They were arguing about salad while my life had been stolen. I stood up. I put the printed email in my pocket. I put the photo of my 12-year-old self in my pocket. First River Bank, the safe deposit box. The key was in my pocket. Amber wanted her salad. My mother wanted me to remain invisible. I decided, right then, that they were done. The bank closed at 5. It was 4:30. I grabbed the L5's case and the metal briefcase. I did not bother to lock the door. I ran down the stairs. I was not going to the bank tomorrow. I was not going to wait. I was going now. I ran. I did not walk. I ran the 7 blocks to First River Bank. The L5 case bouncing awkwardly against my back, and the heavy metal briefcase clutched in my left hand. I looked like a refugee, dusty and wild-eyed. carrying the only possessions I had in the world. The adrenaline was burning, but the hunger was still there, a hollow space in my stomach that made my head feel light. I kept seeing my mother's name on that email, my 12-year-old face in that photograph. The bank was closing. The polished marble floors of the lobby were empty, the velvet ropes already up. A security guard was standing by the main glass doors, ready to lock them. It was 4:51. "I need to access a safe deposit box," I said, my voice breathless. The guard looked at the clock, then at me. His expression was a mix of annoyance and pity. "Vault's closed. Miss, you gotta come back Monday." "No," I said. My voice was suddenly hard, a tone I did not recognize. "I have the key, and a letter from the executor. It's an estate matter. It's urgent." I must have looked desperate enough, or crazy enough, that he hesitated. He motioned to the vault manager's desk, where a woman with severe black hair was packing her briefcase. "Ms. Davies, this lady says it's an emergency. Estate." "Ms." Davies looked up, her disapproval obvious. I looked like I was there to rob the place, not access a vault. "We close at 5, she said, her voice crisp. I walked to her desk. Ignoring the guard, I put the heavy skeleton key on her polished mahogany desk, then the small, brass safe deposit key, and finally, the wax-sealed envelope Ralph had given me, the one with my name on it. "Box 412, I said. "The owner is Gustav Whitman. He is deceased. I am the contingent beneficiary. This letter authorizes my access, and I have the key." Her eyes flickered over the items, the old key, the heavy paper. This was not a standard transaction. She sighed, took off her glasses, and sat back down. "Access to a deceased holder's box is highly irregular. It requires the executor, or a court order. The executor sent me. His name is Ralph Delaney. You can call him." She looked at me, then at her computer. She typed, "The box holder is listed as G. Whitman, the contingent trustee. The only other person authorized for access is indeed a Mr. Ralph Delaney." She looked up. "You are not Mr. Delaney." "He sent me," I repeated. He said I passed the test. Please, just call him. He's expecting it." "Ms." Davies stared at me for a long, silent moment. Then she picked up her phone and dialed a number from the screen. "Mr. Delaney. This is Judith Davies at First River Bank. I have a young woman here. A Ms. Aspen Rodriguez. Yes, she has the key for 412, Mr. Whitman's box." Her face changed. The stern disapproval softened into confusion, then respect. Yes, I see." She played the chord. "Yes, sir, I understand. Yes, the authorization code is on file." She hung up the phone and looked at me as if I were a different person. "My apologies, Ms. Rodriguez. Right this way." She led me through the silent lobby to the massive, circular vault door. It felt like walking into a tomb. She used her key, then directed me to insert mine. There was a heavy, satisfying thunk, and she pulled a long metal box from the wall. "Box 412. "The private viewing room is just here," she said, ushering me into a small beige cubicle with a desk, a chair, and a privacy door. "Take all the time you need. I will be outside." She slid the box onto the desk and closed the door, leaving me alone. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood in my ears. I lifted the lid. It was not full of gold or cash. It was full of paper. It was an arsenal. On top was a thick, legal-sized document, bound in a blue cover. Codicil to the last will and testament of Gustav Whitman. It was not a draft. This one was stiff, official. I opened it. The notary seal was raised, embossed into the paper. It was real. It was executed. Beneath it was a small micro-cassette recorder. A label in Gus's handwriting read, "For A.R., play this first." I pressed the play button. His voice filled the small room. Not his old, frail voice, but his strong, mid-70s recording voice. Gravelly, warm, and clear. Aspen, the tape hissed. If you are hearing this, you are in. You passed the test. I knew you would. You're the only one who ever really listened. Don't trust them, kid. Don't trust any of them. Your mother, your sister. They hear noise. You hear music. There's a difference. This box contains the truth. Use it. Don't let them take your sound. The tape clicked off. I was shaking. They hear noise. You hear music. Next, a single, silver USB flash drive. It was labeled Blue Crown. Beside the drive was another handwritten note, the same stationery as the one in the envelope. My Aspen, if you're here, the music saved you. Don't you dare sell that guitar because you're hungry. Jazz will feed you. It was always meant to. I made sure of it. Play true. Gus. Tears pricked my eyes. But the anger was stronger. I put the note aside. At the very bottom of the box was a thin manila envelope. It was not sealed. I pulled out the contents. It was a bank document, a confirmation of receipt from First River Bank's trust department. It stated that a packet containing sensitive estate and testamentary documents had been handed over to a certified USPS courier for delivery to the designated family contact, Ms. Darlene Rodriguez, on October 12, 2016. Stapled to it was the proof, a grainy black and white photocopy of the USPS delivery slip, the tracking number, the date, and the signature. Darlene Rodriguez. It was her, unmistakable. The looping, self-important D, the sharp, dismissive R, the signature I had seen on every birthday card, every permission slip, my entire life. She had it. She had the will. She had the codicil. She signed for it 8 years ago, held the physical documents in her hand, and then she buried it. She told the lawyers I lost contact. She told me my grandfather was broke. My breath was coming in short, sharp gasps. This was not negligence. This was not an oversight. This was intentional. This was theft. I looked at the silver USB drive. My hands were steady now. The anger had burned away the shakes. The viewing room had a small, old-fashioned desktop computer built into the desk for client convenience. It was ancient, but it had a USB port. I plugged in the drive. A single folder appeared on the screen, Blue Crown Publishing. I clicked it. Inside, 2 files. The first was Royalty Statements Master. It was a spreadsheet. I opened it. My eyes scanned the columns. Quarterly royalty payments for Composition Catalog. G. Whitman. 2017. Q1. $4,200. 2017. Q3. $5,100. 2019. Q2. A spike. A commercial placement. $78,000. 2021. 2022. The numbers were consistent. 4 figures, sometimes 5. The most recent statement. Last month, $112,400. The total in the account, untouched, compounding, was well into 6 figures. I felt dizzy. This was the money he was using to pay the rent on the garret, to fund the club. It was just sitting there. I closed the spreadsheet. My hand was on the mouse, hovering over the second file. Acquisition Offer Draft Blue Crown PDF. I opened it. My brain struggled to process the language. Hereby offers to purchase the complete collected works, including all publishing and master recording rights, of the catalog of Gustav Whitman. I scrolled past the legal jargon. Looking for the number, I found it. Section 3A, Purchase Price. A floor price of $2,400,000, $2,400, $1,000 ounce, plus a standard 15% earnout on all future placements in perpetuity. $2.4 million. I stopped breathing. It was a draft. Waiting for one signature. The line at the bottom was blank. Typed, heir and beneficiary, me. I felt a sudden, cold clarity. I knew what I had to do. I pulled out my phone. I went to the leather notebook from the garret. Crawford Ames, LLP. I dialed the number. A crisp voice answered. Crawford and Ames. How may I direct your call? My name is Aspen Rodriguez. I need to speak to someone about the estate of Gustav Whitman. A pause. One moment, please. I was put on hold, forced to listen to a bland classical piece. A new voice, a paralegal. Picked up. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm pulling the Whitman file. Yes, I see it here. Ma'am, that file was closed in 2017. It was closed in error, I said, my voice steel. Sir, the notes say, let me see. Primary beneficiary declined to execute, and the contingent beneficiary. Family member reported she was unreachable, had moved away, and lost contact. The file was archived. Lost contact. I had lived in the same zip code my entire life. That information is fraudulent, I said. I am Aspen Rodriguez. I am the contingent beneficiary. I am in possession of the notarized codicil from 2016, the USB drive with the Blue Crown acquisition offer, and the USPS proof of receipt showing Darlene Rodriguez signed for the original will packet 8 years ago and concealed it. The silence on the other end was absolute. I see, the paralegal said finally, his voice entirely different. Mr. Crawford is retired, but Ms. Ames is the senior partner. She is in court this afternoon. Book me for the first available slot tomorrow, I said. This is an emergency consultation. My family is actively interfering with a multi-million-dollar estate. That would be 8 a.m., he said, regarding the retainer fee. Check the file, I interrupted. My grandfather set up an escrow account for contingent execution. Check that. Another pause. More typing. You are correct. An escrow account is active. The consultation will be covered. We will see you at 8 a.m. Ms. Rodriguez. I hung up. I systematically pulled the documents from the box. The notarized codicil, the handwritten note, the bank receipt, the USPS photo. I put them, and the USB drive, into my empty backpack. It felt like loading a weapon. I put the micro-cassette recorder in my pocket. I left the empty box, put the lid back on, and walked out of the viewing room. Ms. Davies looked up. All set. Yes, I said. Thank you for your time. I walked out of the vault. I walked across the cold marble floor. The guard held the door for me as I stepped out into the evening air. My phone buzzed. A text. From my mother. Aspen, Amber says you're ignoring her. I need the recipe for your aunt's favorite pecan pie. The one you made last year. Send it over. Honey. And don't forget the salad. I looked at the screen. The pecan pie. The walnuts. The casual. Profound. Breathtaking cruelty of it. I did not text back. I put the phone in my pocket. I looked up and down the street. The hunger was still a sharp pain in my gut, but for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. My phone rang. A call. Ralph. I picked it up. I'm out, I said. You got it. You saw it all. I did. Ralph, it's $2.4 million. And she hit it. A heavy sigh on the other end. I figured it was something big. Gus never did things by half. Now you listen to me. Aspen, don't go to your apartment. Don't call them. Don't answer their texts. This isn't a family squabble anymore. This is war. I have a meeting with Ms. Ames tomorrow at 8 a.m., I said. Good. Crawford and Ames are the estate lawyers. They're thorough. But they're slow, Ralph said. You need someone else. You need a shark. And you need a witness for tonight. I'm calling someone. Meet me at the Riverside Club. Use the back entrance. 1 hour. He hung up before I could reply. I zipped the backpack tight. I adjusted the strap of the L5 on my shoulder. I still had $3.41 in my pocket. I was still starving. But I did not turn left toward my apartment. I turned right, toward the river, toward the club. The fight was on. The back alley of the Riverside Club smelled of damp brick, stale beer, and the faint, sweet aroma of barbecue from the restaurant next door. It was a comforting smell, a real smell. The alley was lit by a single, yellow bug light above a heavy steel door. I knocked. The rhythm Ralph had taught me when I was a kid. Tap, tap to tap. The door opened immediately. Ralph stood there, his face grim but kind. "You made it," he said, pulling me inside, out of the dark. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Ghosts?" I said, my voice hoarse. "And lawyers." The guitar case felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The metal briefcase was cold against my hand. The club was dark. The main stage was lit by a few dim, amber-colored spotlights, illuminating a ghost map of microphone stands and coiled cables. The chairs were stacked on the tables, all except for one in the very center of the room. A woman was sitting at that table. She was not what I expected. She was not old or severe. She was perhaps in her late 40s, sharp, with dark hair pulled back in a way that meant business, not style. She wore a perfectly tailored blazer and was sipping from a glass of water. She looked like she belonged in a high-rise boardroom, not a dusty jazz club at 9 p.m. "Aspen Rodriguez," Ralph said, walking me toward her. "This is Marta Quinn. Marta is the best probate litigator in Missouri. She specializes in contested estates." Marta Quinn did not stand. She just watched me approach, her eyes flicking from my face to the guitar case, then to the metal briefcase. She was assessing. "Ms. Rodriguez," she said. Her voice was clear, measured. "Ralph has explained the situation. You've had quite a day." "I'm still processing," I said. I set the metal briefcase on the table. "I have the codicil from the bank, the real one, and a USB drive. And this." I indicated the briefcase. "It's locked. The key was in the deposit box." Marta nodded. "We will get to that. First, we need to formalize what happened at the pawn shop." She opened her own sleek briefcase and pulled out a fresh legal pad and a high-end fountain pen. "The codicil your grandfather wrote is unique," Marta said. "It's an execution test. It's brilliant. Actually, most wills rely on witness testimony. He created a living witness test that only the true heir could pass. But a story about you playing in a pawn shop won't hold up in court. We need to create a formal record. Tonight. Now." Ralph had moved to the stage. He switched on an old Fender Vibrolux amplifier. It hummed to life, a low, warm sound. "Marta is here to serve as an independent, expert witness," Ralph explained, his voice echoing slightly in the empty club. "She has already reviewed a copy of the codicil I had on file. She knows the language. She knows the test." "What I am about to do," Marta said, clicking her pen, "is create a sworn affidavit. I am witnessing you, Ms. Rodriguez, attempt to fulfill the primary condition of the codicil. The club's security cameras are recording, time-stamped, to verify the event. Please, proceed to the stage." My legs felt hollow. The hunger was making me dizzy. I had not eaten since. I could not remember. Yesterday, a piece of toast. "Ralph," I whispered. "I haven't eaten. My hands are shaking." Ralph looked at me, his eyes full of concern. He hurried behind the bar and came back with a glass of orange juice and a small bag of salted peanuts. "Get this in you," he ordered. "The sugar will help. We need your fingers to work." I drank the juice so fast it hurt my throat. The rush of pure sugar was immediate, a jolt to my system. I tore open the peanuts, my hands still trembling, and ate them. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "Okay." I walked onto the small stage. It was made of worn planks of wood, scarred by decades of amplifiers and drum kits. This was where Gus played. I opened the L5's case, took out the guitar, and plugged the cable into the Vibrolux. The warm hum of the amp felt like a heartbeat. I looked out at the two of them, Ralph, standing by the bar, his arms crossed, Marta Quinn, sitting at her table, pen poised over the paper, waiting. I put my fingers to the strings. I took a breath. I played body and soul. I played it differently than I had in the pawn shop. This was not a desperate plea. This was not a tremor of recognition. This was a statement. I played it the way Gus taught me, with the subtle rhythmic pulls, the breath between the phrases, The notes filled the empty, smoky room. The sound was beautiful, deep and rich, the way the guitar was meant to sound, amplified and alive. I reached the bridge. My mind was clear. The sugar and the adrenaline had formed a sharp, focused point. I played the progression, and then I played the chord, the tritone substitution. I let it hang in the air. That complex, dissonant 13-flat-9 voicing. It was Gus's signature, his fingerprint. It was the sound of loving jazz so much that you were willing to break the rules to make it beautiful. I played through the rest of the song, ending on the final, resolving note. The sound faded into the hum of the amplifier. Silence. Marta Quinn did not look up. She was writing, her pen moving quickly, furiously, across the legal pad. After a long moment, she stopped. She clicked the pen. She looked up at me. Her face was no longer assessing. It was impressed. "Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. You can come down." I unplugged the guitar, my hands shaking again, the adrenaline starting to recede. I walked back to the table. Marta tore the sheet of paper from the pad. "I will type this up formally and have it notarized by 8 a.m. tomorrow," she said. "But this is the text." She read aloud, "On this date, I, Marta Quinn, attorney at law, did witness Aspen Rodriguez perform the composition Body and Soul. Upon reaching the bridge, the performer did execute the specific harmonic substitution described in the codicil of Gustav Whitman. The performance included the specified 13-flat-9 voicing over the dominant chord. The execution was flawless and matches the legal criteria set forth. The performance was recorded by Club Security Systems. Time code 1642. Military time." She turned the pad around for me to see. It was real. "One more thing," Ralph said. He went behind the stage and came back carrying the reel-to-reel player from the garret. He placed it on the bar. "This was in the apartment. Standards. Private takes." He threaded the old tape, his movements practiced. He hit play, the speakers hissed, and then Gus's voice, the one from the microcassette, filled the club. "This is the test," his voice crackled. "The real one. Darlene will never get this. Amber won't. They don't listen. But Aspen, she listens. If you're hearing this, kid, it's because you played the chord. That's the key. That's the signature. If you can end the phrase like that, with that specific note, you're my blood. You're the only one." The tape clicked off. Marta Quinn stared at the recorder. "My God," she whispered. "It's an audio confirmation of intent. This isn't just a will. It's a fortress." He knew they would try to bury it. An old man I had not noticed before, sitting on a bar stool deep in the shadows, stood up and walked into the light. He was frail, with a face like a dried apple, and he was holding a saxophone. He must have been one of the musicians Ralph had called. He did not look at me. He looked at the L5, which I was still holding. He pointed a long, bony finger at the body of the guitar, near the F-hole. "That scratch," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Right there." I looked at the mark. It was a small, white nick in the sunburst finish. "I was there," the old man said. 1978, the old Mint Lounge in St. Louis. Gus was playing so hard he knocked over his bar stool. The metal foot hit the guitar. He never fixed it. He said it was a reminder to always play like you're falling over. I looked at the scratch, and I finally broke. The tears came, hot and silent. I leaned over the guitar, my shoulders shaking. I was not crying for the $2.4 million. I was not crying from hunger or exhaustion. I was crying because for the first time in my 30 years, I was not invisible. My entire life, my mother and sister had treated me as background noise, as an afterthought, a convenience. They defined me by my failures, by my lack of a husband, by my dead-end job. But Gus saw me. He heard me. He built this entire, intricate, secret world, this test of music and memory, all based on the absolute faith that I, and only I, would be the one to find my way. He did not leave me an inheritance. He left me an identity. Ralph put a steady hand on my shoulder. Marta Quinn looked away, giving me the dignity of a moment, her pen tapping softly on the table. I wiped my face. Okay, I said. Okay, what's next? Marta slid the pen back into her blazer. She was all business again. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., I am canceling your appointment with Ms. Ames. She's an estate planner. You need a litigator. You've got one. We are filing an emergency petition in Coleman County Probate Court to have the codicil validated and to have you formally recognized as the sole beneficiary. She pointed at my backpack. We will use your notarized codicil, my affidavit, the audio from that tape, and the security footage from tonight. That establishes your claim. Then, we use the evidence from the bank. She tapped her pen on the table. The USPS receipt, the email from the garret. That's the weapon. We are not just claiming your inheritance, Ms. Rodriguez. We are accusing your mother of fraudulent concealment and tortious interference with an inheritance. We will move to have her legally barred from the estate and seek damages. My phone, silent in my pocket all night, suddenly buzzed. The vibration felt violent in the quiet room. I pulled it out. A text message. From Amber. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. Hey Aspen, weirdest thing, my distributor just put my account on hold. I'm short on a big inventory order. Can I borrow $4,000? Just for a week. I'll pay you back as soon as I move this new shipment. Please, it's an emergency. $4,000, after ignoring my text about having no food. Show me, Marta said. I handed her the phone. She read the text. Her expression was cold. Do not reply, she said. She's scrambling. She must have gotten wind that something is happening. Maybe the publisher. Maybe the bank. They're trying to get money. Liquidate. Before the freeze hits. As if on cue, the phone buzzed again. A call. Mom, Darlene. I looked at the name. My thumb hovered over the accept button. Let it go to voicemail, Marta commanded. As of this moment, you do not speak to your family without me present. Not a text, not a call, nothing. They are no longer your family. Ms. Rodriguez. They are the opposing counsel. I hit the decline button. The call stopped. A second later, the voicemail icon appeared. I picked up the metal briefcase. What about this? Marta looked at the lead seal. The keyhole. Gus's final gift, I imagine. We open it now. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small, heavy tool, like a wire cutter. I've seen these seals before on sensitive trust documents. Let's see what else your grandfather wanted you to find. I spent that night on the dusty cot in the Arrow Street garret. I did not sleep. The hunger, the exhaustion, and the shock had synthesized into a cold, diamond-hard clarity. The room, Gus's secret sanctuary, had become my war room. Before I left the Riverside Club, Marta Quinn had given me my instructions. Her voice was precise, devoid of sentiment. Go back to the garret. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow, your homework begins. Your family didn't just hide a will. They built an entire architecture of dismissal around you, brick by brick, for your entire life. I need the blueprint. Go through your phone, your emails, your bank statements. I need every instance of manipulation, every demand, every dollar they took. We are not just proving you are the heir. We are proving they were never fit to be. So I began. At dawn, I sat at my grandfather's dark wood desk, my laptop open, my old phone plugged into the wall. Charging. I opened the group chat. The chat name was Family. The irony tasted like ash. I scrolled back. 1 year, 2 years, 5. The pattern was not subtle. It was a bludgeon. It was so obvious I felt a wave of profound stupidity for having lived inside it for so long. 2 years ago, a message from me. I got the promotion at Meridian Ortho Labs. I'm the new lead tech. The blue read receipts appeared almost instantly. Read by Darlene, read by Amber. And then, nothing. Not one congratulations, Not a single thumbs up emoji. The conversation was buried an hour later by Amber posting a picture of her new shoes. I scrolled down. Last year. A message from me. My car blew up. The transmission is shot. I am going to be really tight this month. Might need help with the utility bill. Read by Darlene. Read by Amber. Silence. 2 days later, a flood of texts from my mother. Aspen, I need you. Your cousin is flying in. I need you to get her from the airport at 5 p.m. I have my hair appointment and Amber is at a trunk show. It was not a request. It was an assignment. My needs were met with silence. Their needs were my emergencies. It was a one-way street, and I was the only one paying the toll. I opened my old bank statements from my time at Meridian. My salary was respectable, $48,000 a year. I looked at the transfers. Transfer to Darlene, $300. Transfer to Amber, $500. It was constant, a steady bleeding. They called it contributing. They called it helping the family pot. But the pot was a sieve, and the money only ever flowed out of my account and into theirs. My sister, with her 5-figure online boutique, never contributed. Her money was hers. My money was family money. I found the file for the credit card. 4 years ago. Amber, her eyes wide with manufactured panic. Aspen, I need this new inventory, but my credit is shot. Please, just co-sign on this one card. It's just a formality. I'll pay it off in 2 months. I was stupid. I was lonely. I co-signed. The default notices started 3 months later. She had maxed it out and vanished. To protect my own credit score, I paid. I paid $1,100 a month for 11 agonizing months. 11 months of instant ramen and expired milk so Amber could sell overpriced blouses. When I made the final payment, I texted her. It's done. I paid it off. Her reply. Great. You shouldn't have let it get that late. The interest almost hurt my score. No thank you. No apology. Just blame. I closed the banking portal. My stomach tight. I looked at the heavy skeleton key to the garret. I thought about the funeral. 8 years ago. My mother, Darlene, clutching a handkerchief. He left nothing. Aspen. She had wept. Just that old guitar in his dusty apartment. She had collected his keys from the hospital nightstand. I'll handle the cleanup. Honey, don't you worry your pretty head about it. She knew. She knew this place existed. She took the keys not to clean, but to conceal, to possess, to lock me out of my own life. But if she had the key, why had she not changed the lock? Why did my key, the one from the bank, still work? I called Ralph. His voice was gravelly, awake before the sun. Ralph, I'm at the garret. I'm building the case for Marta. One question. If my mother had the keys 8 years ago, why wasn't the lock changed? Ralph was silent for a moment. Because she tried, he said. And she failed. Gus was smarter than that. The lease for the garret was never in his name. It was in the name of the Sunday Afternoon Music Fund, which I managed. The landlord only ever had my number, he continued. About 6, maybe 7 years ago, I got a call from the building manager. He said a woman named Darlene Rodriguez was there with a locksmith, claiming to be the next of kin and demanding the lock be changed. She said the apartment was part of her inheritance. The manager, God bless him, followed the rules and called me. I told him absolutely not. I told him G. Whitman was the tenant, and I was the sole executor of the lease. I drove over there. She was gone, but I knew she'd be back. That afternoon, I had a high-security tumbler system installed inside the old hardware. The key Darlene had was useless after that. Only 2 keys in the world could open it, the one Gus put in the bank for you, and the one I have. She had not just passively hidden the will. She had actively, physically tried to seize this property. The coldness in my chest spread. This was not a mistake. This was a conspiracy. I opened a new document on my laptop. I started the timeline. October 12th, 2016, 11:17 a.m. USPS certified mail. Tracking number ending in 9042. Delivered and signed for by Darlene Rodriguez. Source Bank Vault. USPS receipt. I needed to place her at the house. I went online. Public records. Insurance claims. My mother had filed a minor health insurance claim that winter, a routine checkup. The explanation of benefits was available on her provider's public portal. Appointment Dr. P. Allister. Date October 12, 2016. Time 2:30 p.m. She was home. She was in town. She was at the house that morning when the mail arrived, hours before her afternoon appointment. She could not claim she was away. October 15th, 2016. My own text message history. Me. Hey, Mom. Just checking in. Still so sad about Grandpa. Did he leave anything for us? Her reply. Sent 1 minute later. No, honey, nothing but some junk mail and old records. He was broke. It's just us now. Junk mail. I needed one more piece. I called Mrs. Galliano, our old neighbor, the one who had lived across the street from my mother for 30 years. Mrs. G, hi, it's Aspen Rodriguez. I know this is a very strange question. Do you remember the week after my grandfather Gus died 8 years ago? Oh, Aspen. Honey. Of course. Such a sad time. Your poor mother was so distraught. Do you remember her? Cleaning out his things? Or anyone else being at the house? Oh, let me think, she said. Yes, I do. It was a few days after the service. I was watering my hydrangeas. I saw your sister, Amber. She was leaving the house, carrying one of those silver metal briefcases, you know, like a lawyer, and she was carrying a very full, heavy-looking document bag. I asked if Darlene needed help, and Amber just smiled and said, No, we're just handling some of Gus's old business papers, just tossing out the trash. A metal briefcase, a bag of papers, tossing it. My hand was gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles were white. Thank you, Mrs. Galliano. That helps more than you know. I hung up. I spent the next 6 hours compiling every text screenshot of dismissal, every bank transfer of extortion, the 11 months of credit card statements, the timeline of the will's delivery, the public record of the doctor's visit, my time-stamped notes from the call with Mrs. Galliano. I cross-referenced every date, every dollar, every lie. It was 64 pages long. I saved the document as a PDF. I titled it Pattern of Dismissal. At 4 p.m., I emailed the file to Marta Quinn. Her reply came in less than 10 minutes. It was short. I have it. This is more than enough. Filing the emergency injunction to freeze the estate right now. She called me. Aspen, the petition is filed, she said, her voice sharp, energized. We are requesting an immediate temporary restraining order on all assets related to Gustav Whitman, including the Blue Crown catalog and all associated royalty accounts. They won't be able to sell the catalog. They won't be able to touch the money. By tomorrow morning, your mother and sister are going to wake up and find that every single door has been locked. What about Amber's text? I asked. The one for $4,000. That's why she sent it, Marta said, her voice cold. Blue Crown must have contacted her or Darlene as the family representative about the acquisition. Now, our petition has hit the wire. Their lawyer has informed them there is a challenge. She's scrambling. She's trying to pull liquid cash from the royalty account before the freeze hits. But it's too late. We just won the race. I hung up. The garret was silent, filled with the dust of the past. I had just declared war on my own blood. I felt a profound, hollow emptiness. I looked at the L5 leaning against the wall like a silent sentinel. I picked it up. I did not plug it in. I sat on the edge of the cot and just played. The acoustic sound was quiet, intimate. I played the scales he taught me. The complex, mathematical changes of giant steps, his own reharmonization of autumn leaves. The music was structural. It was a framework of logic and truth. My family's world was emotional quicksand, lies, and shifting definitions, but the music was real. A C major seventh chord was always C, E, G, and B. It was a foundation. My grandfather had not just taught me music, he had been teaching me how to build a backbone. My phone, which I had turned back on, buzzed on the desk. It was the group chat. Darlene. Aspen, I have been calling and you are not answering. This is extremely rude. Amber. Did you see my text? I am serious. Aspen, I need the $4,000. Where are you? Darlene. You forgot the salad for your aunt's party tonight. We had to buy one from the store. She was very hurt. You need to call me. Right now. I stared at the messages. The old conditioned guilt tried to rise up. The automatic impulse to apologize. To smooth things over. To send the pecan pie recipe. I thought about the 64-page document. I thought about the signature on the USPS receipt. My fingers moved over the keyboard. It was the hardest and simplest message I had ever written. I am busy. Do not contact me about chores or errands again. I hit send. The reply from my mother was instant. Busy with what? I turned the phone off. I placed it face down on the desk. I picked up the guitar and began to practice. The music a shield, a skeleton, holding me upright for the fight to come. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Orchestrated by Marta Quinn, the restraining order had landed. The bank accounts were frozen. The Blue Crown catalog was locked down. I knew this not because Marta told me, but because the silence from my family was replaced by a sudden, frantic, and entirely fraudulent wave of affection. You need to bait the hook, Marta had said on our morning call. They are panicked. They know the money is frozen, but they don't know why. They don't know about the codicil. They don't know you have the will. They just know their access has been cut by a legal challenge. They will assume it's the publisher, or a creditor. They will not assume it's you. Not yet. You are still the wallpaper. So what do? I asked. You become visible, Marta said, but not as a threat, as a potential asset. Remind them you exist, but not why. Ralph had an idea. That night, he set me up on the stage at the riverside, just me and the L5. He had a friend film it on a good phone. I played Autumn Leaves, using Gus's complex, melancholic reharmonization. I posted the 3-minute video to my long-dormant social media. I added no caption, just the music. It took less than an hour. My phone, which had been silent for 2 days since my "I am busy" text, lit up like a Christmas tree. First, my mother. She did not text. She commented on the video, a public performance of maternal pride. My talented girl, just like your grandpa. I always said you had the gift. Call me. Honey, I miss your voice. Second, Amber, a text message. OMG, Aspen, that was amazing. I had no idea you could play like that. Seriously, we need to hang out. I've been thinking, I really want to learn guitar. Maybe you could teach me. I read the messages to Marta over the phone. Good, she said, her voice cool. They're not apologizing. They're pivoting. They see the frozen accounts. They see your text setting a boundary. Now they see this video. You, on a stage, with that very valuable guitar. They are connecting dots, but the wrong ones. They think you're getting a little bit of confidence, maybe making some money from gigs. They see you as a potential new income stream to be managed. Amber doesn't want to learn guitar. She wants to learn what the guitar is worth. What now? Reel them in, Marta said. But slowly, tell them you'll meet. A public place, center of town, lots of witnesses, tomorrow. And Aspen, get a digital voice recorder, a good one. Put it in your pocket and do not turn it off. Missouri is a one-party consent state. As long as you are part of the conversation, it is perfectly legal to record it. And they will. I promise you, they will incriminate themselves. I replied to the group chat. Thank you for the kind words. I'd be happy to see you. How about coffee tomorrow? 10 a.m. at the Beanery downtown. The reply was instant. Wonderful. We can't wait to see you. Honey. I bought the recorder that evening. I spent the night in the garret, the 64-page pattern of dismissal open on my laptop, studying it like a script. I was not just going to coffee. I was going to a deposition. I arrived at 10:01. They were already there, seated at a prominent table by the window. They both stood up to hug me. The hugs felt wrong. They were brittle, theatrical. Amber's perfume was overpowering. My mother's hands were cold. "Aspen, you look thin," my mother said, her face a mask of concern. This was her classic opening feigned worry that was actually a criticism. "I've been managing," I said. Sitting down, I pressed the small record button inside my jacket pocket. The tiny red light blinked once and went dark. "Just managing," Darlene said, leaning in. "Honey, we were so worried. You send that awful text, and then you just disappear, and your aunt was so upset about the salad." "I was busy," I said, my voice flat. "Busy with what?" Amber jumped in, her smile too bright. "Playing gigs." "That video was so professional. Is that club paying you?" "I'm just practicing," I said. "Ralph is letting me use the space." "Ralph," my mother said, her nose wrinkling. "That old man. I never trusted him, always hanging around your grandpa." "He was Grandpa's best friend," I said. "Well, speaking of work," Darlene said, "that's what I wanted to talk about. Now that you're between jobs, have you thought about your next steps, your credit cards? Are they okay? You know, it's so important to maintain your credit score." It was a probe, a fishing expedition. They wanted to know if I was in debt. They wanted to know if I was desperate. "I'm handling my finances," I said. Amber leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "That guitar, though, that's the real ticket. I did some research online. That Gibson L5, some of those sell for a lot. Like, a lot. How much is that one worth?" "Exactly." There it was. The real question, not how are you, but how much can we get? "I would never sell it," I said. "Don't be sentimental. Aspen," Amber said, waving her hand. "It's a piece of wood. If it can clear your debts and help the family, you should sell it. Mom and I could even help you find a buyer. We'd only take a small commission, say 10%, for our time." I looked at her. 10%. For selling the one thing that had just saved my life. "It's not for sale," I said. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter. "But speaking of Grandpa's things, I did find something interesting in the garret." They both froze. It was a subtle, microscopic change. My mother's hand stopped on its way to her coffee cup. Amber's smile tightened at the corners. "The garret," Darlene said, her voice a shade too high. "That dusty old room. I thought Ralph had all the keys to that place." "I found a key," I said, which was true. "And I found some of Grandpa's old papers, letters, one, in particular, an old letter he wrote. I watched them. This was the move." My mother recovered first. She laughed, a brittle, sharp sound. "Oh, honey, your grandpa was always writing things. Nonsense. Mostly. Notes about his music. Probably nothing important." "I don't know," I said. I looked directly at Amber. "It seemed important. It mentioned his will." Amber dropped her spoon. It clattered loudly against the saucer. "His will," she said. She was pale. "What? What do you mean?" "He didn't have a will. He was broke. There was nothing—" "That's what I thought, too," I said, keeping my voice mild. "But this was a letter about his will, about some papers he sent." My mother was staring at me now. Her eyes narrowed. The mask of concern was gone. This was the Darlene I knew, cold, assessing, dangerous. "What papers?" she said. It was not a question. "I'm not sure," I lied. "It was just a letter." "Well," Amber said, her voice unsteady. She was trying to laugh, but it came out as a gasp. "It doesn't matter. I mean, that letter, it was supposed to be gone. Mom and I, we cleaned all that stuff out years ago. We threw out all the trash." I held my breath. I looked at my mother. Her face was white with fury. She was staring at Amber, a look of pure, unadulterated rage. That letter, it was supposed to be gone. She had just confessed. She had just admitted, on tape, that they had reviewed his papers and had deliberately disposed of them. She had confirmed the concealment. It was the golden slip, the entire case. I did not react. I just nodded slowly. "Oh," I said. "You threw it out?" "Well, I guess I found another one. Then—" The tension at the table was so thick I could barely breathe. My mother stood up abruptly. "We're done here," she said. "Aspen, you are clearly not yourself. You're overtired. You're imagining things." "I'm not imagining anything," I said. "You call me when you stop this. This nonsense," she said, grabbing her purse. "Amber, we're leaving." Amber, still pale, scrambled to her feet. They walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. I sat there for a long minute, my heart hammering against my ribs. I reached into my pocket and felt the recorder. It was still warm. I turned it off. I sent the audio file to Marta from my phone before I even left the table. Her reply was a single sentence: "We got her." I went back to the garret. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me exhausted. I felt like I had just played a 5-set gig. That night, the attack came. I was asleep on the cot when a noise woke me. A scraping, metallic sound. It was coming from the hallway, down by the stairs. I crept to the door, my heart in my throat. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was dim, lit by a single, flickering fluorescent bulb, but I could see a figure, a person, hunched over, at the old-fashioned brass mail slot for my apartment. They were trying to pry it open with a screwdriver. I could not see their face, but I knew that beige coat. I knew the set of those shoulders. It was my mother. She was trying to break in. She was panicked. She knew I had found something, and she was trying to get it. I banged on the door with my fist. "Get out of here!" I yelled. "I'm calling the police." The figure froze. She looked up, startled, and I saw her face in the bad light. It was her, Darlene. She dropped the screwdriver, which clattered on the wooden floor, and she ran. I heard her feet pounding down the wooden stairs. I leaned against the door, shaking. I called Ralph. "She was just here. My mother. She tried to break in." "Stay put," he said, his voice hard. "I'm coming. And Aspen, the old landlord put a security camera in that hallway years ago, after a break-in on the second floor. It's old, but it records. I'll get the footage." He called back an hour later. "Got it," he said. "It's grainy as hell, but it's her, time-stamped, trying to pry open your mail slot. It's attempted breaking and entering. Marta is going to love this." He paused. "And one more thing. The chess game just got another player. I got an email this evening, anonymous, sent through a proxy server. What did it say? It was an offer to buy the G. Whitman catalog, all of it, for $300,000, cash. They said they heard it was in legal trouble, and this would be a quick, clean way out. They want to buy it cheap, before the court validates the will." "My family," I whispered. "They're trying to sell it out from under me." "Or a third party they've contacted," Ralph said. "Marta's already on it. She's issuing a preservation order to Blue Crown. Nothing moves. Nothing gets sold to anyone, at any price, until a judge says your name." I hung up. The room felt small, suffocating. My mother, my sister, strangers, thieves. I looked at the L5 case. I felt a sudden, desperate need to connect with the one person who had told me the truth. I opened the case. I ran my hands along the deep, worn velvet lining. My fingers brushed against a seam that had come loose, deep inside the accessory pocket, tucked beneath the lining. My fingers hit something stiff. Paper. I pulled it out. It was a single, small piece of stationery, folded many times. It was not in an envelope. It was just hidden. A last-second thought. The handwriting was Gus's. It was shaky, written near the end. "My Aspen," it read. "They will try to tell you what you are. They will try to make you small. They hear the notes, but they don't hear the music. Don't ever let anyone tell you you're surplus. You're not the leftover. You are the whole song." I sank onto the cot, the note in my hand. He knew. He knew all of it. He knew them, and he knew me. You are the whole song. Coleman County Probate Court was not a grand hall of justice. It was a functional beige room that smelled of old paper, floor wax, and the stale anxiety of people waiting for their lives to be divided. The only sound was the rhythmic clicking of the court clerk's keyboard and the wheeze of the air conditioner. I sat at a heavy oak table, my back straight, my hands clasped in my lap. Marta Quinn sat beside me, her files arranged in perfect, militant order. Across the narrow aisle, my mother and Amber sat behind their lawyer, Grant Lyle. Darlene, my mother, was dressed in a conservative navy suit, her face arranged in a mask of grieving concern. Amber just looked angry, her arms crossed tightly. At 9 a.m. precisely, Judge Aria Bell entered. She was sharp, efficient, and had an expression of profound impatience. She looked like she had zero tolerance for dramatics. "We are here," Judge Bell announced, her voice cutting through the silence. "On the matter of the estate of Gustav Whitman, this is an emergency hearing to determine the validity of a codicil dated February 2016 and to address a petition for a restraining order on the estate's assets." Marta stood. "Your Honor, Marta Quinn for the petitioner, Ms. Aspen Rodriguez. We have submitted our evidence packet. It includes the original notarized codicil retrieved from the decedent's safe deposit box, my own sworn affidavit as an expert witness attesting to the fulfillment of the codicil's conditions, and a time-stamped, high-definition video recording of Ms. Rodriguez fulfilling those conditions." Grant Lyle shot to his feet. "Grant Lyle, Your Honor, representing Ms. Darlene Rodriguez, the decedent's daughter and next of kin. This entire petition is an absurdity. The so-called codicil is procedurally and emotionally unsound. It is vague. It is capricious. It attempts to enforce a sentimental whim, not a legal directive," he sneered. "A test to play a song. This is the very definition of an ambiguous error. It cannot be legally measured. It is unenforceable. We move to dismiss this entire circus." Judge Bell looked at Marta, her pen tapping. "He has a point, Ms. Quinn. Playing a song is a vague standard." "It would be, Your Honor," Marta said, her voice perfectly level, "if the decedent had not provided a specific, technical, and measurable definition, permission to play audio evidence labeled Exhibit B, recovered from the decedent's bank vault." The judge nodded. The clerk pressed a button. My grandfather's voice, gravelly and warm, filled the courtroom. The test, the 13-flat-9 voicing, the G in the bass, the tritone sub, the half-beat rest before the resolve. Lyle's smirk faltered. This was not sentimental whim. This was technical instruction. "I call Mr. Al Jones," Marta said, "the old sax player from the Riverside, the man who knew the scratch on my guitar," walked slowly to the witness stand. "Mr. Jones," Marta began, "you are a professional musician with over 50 years of experience." "Yes, ma'am. And you were present for the video recorded in Exhibit A, and you have analyzed the audio from Exhibit B." "I have. It's Gus's signature." "All right. The voicing he described on that tape is exactly what Ms. Rodriguez played, note for note." "We also submitted Exhibit C," Marta continued, "a digital waveform analysis comparing the audio from Mr. Whitman's private tape to the audio from Ms. Rodriguez's performance. They are, as you can see, a near-perfect match in structure, voicing, and timing. On the monitor, 2 sound waves pulsed, one green, one blue. They were mirrors. "But, Your Honor," Marta pressed on, "the defense argues this is a whim. We argue it was a necessary security measure. Mr. Whitman created this test because he knew his daughter, Darlene Rodriguez, would attempt to conceal his true wishes." "Objection," Lyle shouted. "Speculation." "Fact," Marta countered, holding up a new document. "Permission to submit. Exhibit D. A United States Postal Service certified mail receipt, dated October 12, 2016. It shows Ms. Darlene Rodriguez signing for and receiving the complete packet of testamentary documents from the estate lawyers at Crawford and Ames. The clerk placed the receipt on the overhead projector. My mother's looping, arrogant signature filled the screen. The entire energy of the room shifted. Judge Bell leaned forward, her eyes fixed on my mother. "Mr. Lyle," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Your client signed for the will packet 8 years ago, the same packet her counsel, and she herself, have claimed did not exist. Your Honor, my client was distraught. She received many papers, and she actively disposed of them," Marta cut in. "I call Mrs. Elara Galliano." Mrs. Galliano, my mother's old neighbor, walked nervously to the stand. "Mrs. Galliano," Marta asked, "do you recall the days following Mr. Whitman's funeral?" "Oh, yes, a very sad time. Did you happen to see Ms. Rodriguez or her daughter, Amber, at the house?" "Yes, I saw Amber. She was leaving the house, carrying a bag, a document bag, it looked like, and a metal briefcase. I asked if Darlene needed help, and Amber said, 'I remember it,'" she said. "No thanks. We're just tossing out Gus's old business trash." "Business trash," Marta repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "Thank you. No further questions." Grant Lyle was pale. He fumbled with his papers. "Your Honor, this is a coordinated ambush. My clients have not had time to review this testimony. We request a continuance, a 60-day delay to properly prepare a defense." Judge Bell stared at him. "Mr. Lyle, you are here to argue the validity of a codicil. Ms. Quinn has provided the document, a recording from the decedent explaining its specific terms, an expert witness verifying those terms were met, video evidence of the fulfillment, and compelling evidence of fraudulent concealment by your client. I find there is more than sufficient basis to proceed. Motion for continuance is denied." My mother suddenly burst into tears. It was a loud, theatrical sob, designed for the room. "I don't understand," she wailed, burying her face in her hands. "This is my daughter. She's being manipulated by these people. I was only trying to protect her. I was afraid she was being taken advantage of." Judge Bell did not even blink. "Ms. Rodriguez," she said, her voice like ice, "this court is not concerned with your personal dramatics. We are concerned with the legal execution of a will. Control yourself, or you will be removed." My mother's sobs stopped instantly. She looked up, her face stripped bare of its performance, her eyes full of pure venom. Judge Bell made a note. "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, this court is issuing a temporary order. 1. The codicil dated February 2016 is recognized as having a high probability of validity. 2. Ms. Aspen Rodriguez is recognized as the probable sole beneficiary, pending a final ruling. 3. The existing freeze on all assets of the estate is hereby reinforced. Any attempt to transfer, sell, or otherwise encumber the assets, including the Blue Crown Publishing Catalog, will be met with contempt charges. I trust you will explain the penalties for destroying evidence to your clients. Mr. Lyle," she looked at her calendar, "we will reconvene in 1 week for a final ruling and to address the counterclaims of tortious interference. We are adjourned." The gavel cracked. It was a victory, a temporary one. Marta packed her briefcase, her movements precise. "We won the battle," she said quietly. "But they have 1 week. Lyle will try to prove you're incompetent. He'll try to prove Gus was senile. He'll try to break the chain of evidence. We need one more thing, a final, unassailable piece of the puzzle, a knockout punch." As we stood to leave, my mother and Amber stormed past us, not making eye contact. My phone buzzed in my backpack. I pulled it out. It was a new email. The sender was a vice president at Blue Crown Publishing. "Ms. Rodriguez, we have been notified by your counsel, Ms. Quinn, of the pending probate action and its favorable turn. We are, as you know, extremely eager to acquire your grandfather's catalog. To prove our commitment, and pending a clean resolution where you are confirmed as the sole signatory, Blue Crown is prepared to raise our acquisition offer. We are prepared to offer $3.1 million up front, plus the original 15% earnout. We hope this development assists in a speedy resolution. $3.1 million. I showed the phone to Marta. A slow, cold, dangerous smile spread across her face. Well, she said, now we know exactly what we are fighting for. Let's go open that metal briefcase. We walked back to the garret, the adrenaline of the courtroom fading, replaced by the electric hum of the $3.1 million offer. The victory was temporary, but the momentum was ours. Marta, Ralph, and I stood in the dusty room, the afternoon light cutting through the grime. All eyes went to the silver metal briefcase, the one my mother had tried to steal, the one Amber had been seen carrying out of Gus's house 8 years ago, dismissing it as trash. That, Marta said, pointing to the case, is the knockout punch. Mr. Lyle has 1 week to try and paint your grandfather as senile or you as an opportunist. That case holds the rebuttal. Let's open it. I took the small, brass key from my pocket, the key from the safe deposit box, the key that had survived 8 years of concealment. I knelt. The lead seal, the one Marta had noted, was still looped through the handle. Amber must have put it back on. A clumsy attempt to make it look undisturbed after she and my mother had looted it. I inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a heavy, precise click. I lifted the latches. The case hissed open. It did not contain money or gold. It was full of my grandfather's soul. On top, there were 3 thick, leather-bound notebooks. They were not diaries. They were harmony and composition journals. The pages were covered in his dense, meticulous musical notation, chord voicings I had only dreamed of, theoretical explorations, and complete, finished arrangements. Look at this, Marta said, pulling one out. She pointed to a page marked Private Takes, Standards. The song was Body and Soul, and there, at the bottom, in ink, was his full signature, Gustav Whitman. This is his author's signature, Marta said, her voice sharp with excitement. These are the private arrangements he recorded on the reel-to-reel tapes. He signed them. This isn't just a journal. It's a copyright declaration. He legally authored these versions. This establishes a clear chain of title for his unique intellectual property. It's a wall of sound. Beneath the notebooks was a thick, formal document. It was not from Blue Crown. It was a contract, still in its original blue backing. From Silver Lantern Records. I read the title. Recording and Publishing Agreement. Gustav Whitman. Unreleased Masters. He was recording a new album, Ralph whispered, his voice full of awe. The Private Takes. He never told me he was signing a new deal. Marta scanned the document, her finger flying down the legal text. It's an unexecuted contract, she said. They made him an offer, but look here. Section 5. All rights, royalties, and advances are to be paid directly to the legal beneficiary of his estate upon his death. This contract, it's ready. It's waiting for a signature from the heir. He was building his value, right up to the end. My head was spinning. The catalog Blue Crown wanted was only part of the story. There was more music, unpublished music, and then I saw it, tucked into the lining of the briefcase, a single, folded envelope. It was the same cream-colored stationery as the notes from the bank, but this one was addressed, in his shaky, later-life handwriting, to Aspen. It was not sealed. It had never been sent. I unfolded it. The paper was dated 8 years ago, just before the codicil, just before he died. My dearest Aspen, I am waiting for you. I sit here with the L5 and I play our songs, and I wait. I asked your mother to bring you by this week. I have something important to show you. She says you are very busy. She says you have high school finals, that you are practicing for your soccer team, that you don't have time for this old music anymore. She says you are too busy to come and see your old grandpa. I don't believe it. I don't believe you are too busy for the jazz. The music is in you. Kid, it's not in them. So I am making a map. If you are reading this, it means you found it without her. It means you followed the music home. I am leaving this map for you because I am so very tired, and I'm not sure I can wait much longer. Don't let them make you small. The key is in the music. It's always been in the music. I read the words. She says you are very busy, the lie. The monstrous, simple, devastating lie. I was never busy. I was 15. I spent that entire summer in my bedroom, wondering why he never called. I had begged my mother to take me to see him, and she had told me he was too tired, too sick, that he didn't want visitors. She had not just hidden the will, she had built the wall between us. She had isolated him. She had isolated me. She had curated my loneliness, ensuring I would never be strong enough or connected enough to challenge her. I did not cry. My anger was a cold, pure element now. It was a fuel. At the bottom of the case was one more item, a small, portable cassette recorder. The kind journalists used in the 80s. There was a tape inside. I pressed play. A hiss. Then Gus's voice. Weak, tired, but clear. And the lawyer says this is the only way. The test. The codicil. The box. I've left the breadcrumbs. Darlene. Darlene is so mixed up. Amber, too. They think in dollars, but they don't know the value. They hear the notes, but they don't hear the song. They think I'm crazy. They think I'm a burden. Aspen. She's the one who isn't mixed up. She's the only one who speaks the language. This is all for her. This is the only way I know how to save her. The tape clicked off. He called you the one who isn't mixed up, Ralph said, his eyes wet. He knew. He knew they were telling you he was senile, just like they were telling him you were busy. A final piece of paper fluttered from the cassette deck. A small, torn note. If you find the halftime rubato arrangement of Lush Life in Notebook 3, you're home free. I looked at Ralph. He was smiling. The private stash, he said. This is it. This is the go bag he always talked about. He told me and his old lawyer, Crawford, the one who died. He said if Darlene ever tried to have him declared incompetent, this case was the proof. Proof of his compositions, his business deals, his intentions, and his love for you. He knew she'd come for it. He just didn't know she'd be callous enough to leave it sealed, thinking it was just trash. Marta closed the briefcase. Her face was set. This is it, she said. This is the final, unassailable proof. We have the notebooks, which prove his intellectual property. We have the contract, which proves his sound mind and business acumen. And we have the letter and the tape, which prove his intent, his love for you, and the clear, calculated motive for your mother's concealment. She stood up. I will inventory every item. We will submit this as our final evidence. Grant Lyle can argue about sentimental whims all he wants. I'm going to bury him under a mountain of paper, copyright, and contractual law. The week waiting for the final hearing was the strangest of my life. I was no longer a ghost. I was a target. I was a plaintiff. I was the $3.1 million woman. I could not starve. Marta had advanced me $5,000 against the estate's escrow. The first thing I did was walk into a grocery store and buy a steak, fresh bread, real butter, and a bottle of wine. I ate at the desk in the garret, the taste of food so rich it made me dizzy. I was not hungry, but I was restless. You need to play, Ralph said. You're a musician, not a legal case. Get your hands dirty. That night, he put me on the stage at the Riverside, not for an affidavit, for a real gig. The Sunday afternoon music fund set. This is Aspen Rodriguez, he told the small, respectful crowd. She's Gus Whitman's blood. Listen up. I was terrified. My hands were stiff, but I played. I played Autumn Leaves. I played Body and Soul. I played the songs from his notebooks. I played for 3 hours. The music was rusty, but it was honest. At the end of the night, Ralph handed me the tip jar. It was full. I counted it back at the garret. $324. More than a month's worth of food. I had made my own money, not from a lab, from the L5. The enemy was not idle. A leak came from one of the session players at the club. He had gotten a strange call. It was Amber, he told Ralph. She was trying to find a collector, a private buyer. She told him she had a vintage 54 L5 and that she could get it. No questions asked. She was promising him a 50-50 split with her partner. She was trying to sell your guitar. Aspen, out the back door, for cash, before the judge could rule. I told Marta. She just smiled. Let her, she said. Let her create a paper trail of fraud. Let her put her desperation in writing. She's hanging herself. I stayed quiet. I let them scramble. I let them reveal who they were to the world. I had one final piece of work to do. I opened Notebook 3, the one Gus had mentioned, and I found it. His arrangement of lush life. It was a masterpiece, a halftime rubato. The chords were impossibly complex. The melody twisted around them, beautiful and broken. It was the hardest thing I had ever tried to play. I sat in the garret, the music sheet on the desk, the L5 in my lap. I began to practice. I was not just learning a song. I was memorizing my testimony. I was preparing the living proof. I practiced for hours, my fingers aching. The final chord of the arrangement was a voicing I had never seen, a complex cluster that sounded like a question and an answer at the same time. I finally nailed it, the note ringing pure and true in the dusty room. Ralph was standing at the open door, listening. I looked up, my fingers sore. He nodded, his eyes proud. You're not selling your sound anymore, kid, he said. Your sound is buying you back. We were back in Judge Bell's courtroom. It felt different. The air was colder, sharper. It no longer smelled like old paper. It smelled like new money. A representative from Blue Crown Publishing was there, sitting in the front row, his briefcase open, his expression keen. The final hearing. Marta stood, her voice crisp in the tense silence. Your Honor, before the defense presents its closing arguments, we wish to inform the court that a new acquisition offer for the Whitman catalog has been tendered. The offer from Blue Crown Publishing is now $3.1 million, up front. I heard a sharp intake of breath from across the aisle. Amber. My mother's hands gripped the edge of her table. This offer, Marta continued, includes the 15% earnout over 7 years, as previously discussed. Furthermore, per my client's stipulation, we have secured creative approval rights for any synchronization licenses related to film or television. We are prepared to accept this, pending your ruling. I have only one amendment to the term sheet, a strict anti-assignment clause. Grant Lyle, my mother's lawyer, shot to his feet. Objection. What is the meaning of this? This is prejudicial. Marta turned to him, her voice dropping a degree, losing all warmth. It means, Mr. Lyle, that this contract, this money, and these rights belong only to the signatory. They cannot be assigned, transferred, gifted, or willed to any other party, specifically, Darlene or Amber Rodriguez. It stops here, with the heir. Lyle's face was a blotchy red. He was losing, and he knew it. He turned to the judge, attempting a softer, more reasonable tone. Your Honor, my clients, Ms. Darlene Rodriguez, they are still family. They raised the petitioner. They were the decedent's only daughter. This is a family matter that has been twisted by outside counsel. He spread his hands wide, a caricature of fairness. We propose a simple, fair resolution, a family split, 50-50, 50% for Ms. Aspen Rodriguez, and 50% for her mother and sister, to heal the family, to put this to rest. The room was silent. He was offering to split the money they had tried to steal. Marta did not even look at him. She addressed the judge. Mr. Lyle is offering to heal the family with assets his clients fraudulently concealed for 8 years. He offers 50% of the money they were caught trying to steal. There is no legal basis for this. The codicil, which we have proven valid, names one heir, the contingent heir, Ms. Rodriguez, who passed the test. We do not accept. We reject it absolutely. Judge Bell nodded, her expression grim. Mr. Lyle, you are proposing a settlement for a case you have not yet won. Proceed with your defense, or are you conceding? I leaned over and whispered in Marta's ear. She nodded, a quick, sharp approval. Your Honor, Marta said, my client, Ms. Rodriguez, has one more stipulation for the estate, which she wishes to make public. She will be directing 3% of all future earnings, in perpetuity, to the establishment of the Gus Whitman Jazz Scholarship Fund, to be managed by the Riverside Club, ensuring that young musicians in Hickory Falls have the support her family denied her. Judge Bell actually looked impressed. She made a note. Lyle looked utterly confused. This was not about greed. That move, the giving away of her money, seemed to be the one that finally broke my mother. The pretense, the mask of the grieving, concerned parent, dissolved. Darlene stood up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. You, she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. You have no right. Ms. Rodriguez, Lyle hissed, trying to pull her back down by the sleeve of her blazer. No, she shrieked, her face purple, her eyes bulging. All this, the music, the lawyers, you think you earned this, you think you're special. If it wasn't for us, you'd be nothing. We fed you, we clothed you. If we hadn't raised you, where would you even get the music? The courtroom was stunned. A low, shocked murmur went through the gallery. She had just admitted it. She saw the music not as a gift, but as something she had provided, something she was entitled to. She saw me as her property, a failed investment that had suddenly struck oil. Judge Bell banged her gavel, the sound like a gunshot. Ms. Rodriguez, I warned you. Sit down, or you will be removed and held in contempt. My mother froze, then slowly sank back into her chair, her chest heaving. The mask was gone. All that was left was the raw, ugly resentment. Your Honor, Marta said, rising calmly into the toxic silence. Ms. Darlene Rodriguez just vocalized the core of our case, her belief that she is entitled to her daughter's assets. She concealed the will because she believed she deserved it more. Objection, Lyle yelled, finding his voice. My client is overwrought, Mrs. Quinn is putting words in her mouth. It's speculation. Then let us use her sister's words, Marta said. She nodded to the clerk. Permission to play Exhibit G, a legally obtained recording, one-party consent, from a meeting at the Beanery, 3 days ago. Lyle's face went white. He knew nothing about this. My voice filled the room, tinny and small. I found an old letter. It mentioned his will. Then, Amber's voice, high and panicked. What I mean, that letter, it was supposed to be gone. Mom and I, we cleaned all that stuff out years ago. We threw out all the trash. It was supposed to be gone. The audio clicked off. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Amber looked like she was going to be physically sick. Judge Bell leaned over the bench. Her voice was cold steel. Mr. Lyle, I am looking at a USPS receipt, Exhibit D, showing your client received the will 8 years ago. I have heard testimony she disposed of business trash. I have now heard a recording of her daughter confirming they intentionally disposed of documents. I will ask your client, Darlene Rodriguez. One time, under oath, why did you conceal the testamentary documents from the beneficiary? My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She looked at Lyle. She looked at Amber. She stammered. It was junk mail. I didn't know. I was grieving. You grieve by trying to break into your daughter's apartment with a screwdriver? Marta asked, referencing the police report and the hallway security footage. Exhibit H. Lyle looked defeated. He slumped. Your Honor, he said, his voice weak. In light of this, my clients request a 24-hour recess to discuss a potential settlement. Judge Bell looked at the clock. It was 11 a.m. You have 2 hours. This court will reconvene at 1 p.m. for a final ruling. Do not be late. The gavel cracked. We stayed seated. Marta organized her papers. My mother and Amber, led by a shell-shocked Lyle, practically ran from the courtroom. I had to use the restroom. I had to stand. Marta nodded. Do not speak to them. I walked out into the corridor. They were waiting. A desperate, final ambush. Aspen, my mother grabbed my arm. Her grip was like a claw. The mask was back, the fake tears welling instantly. Aspen, please, you cannot do this. You cannot embarrass your family like this. We raised you. We love you. That money, it will change you. It will make you hard. Let us help you. Let us protect you. I said nothing. I just looked at her hand on my arm until she let go. Amber stepped up, her face pale and blotchy. Aspen, she's right. I messed up. I know I did. I was stupid. But I'll change. We can be a family again, like we used to be. We'll pay you back all of it. Just tell the judge you want to split it. We'll go to therapy. We'll start over. I looked at my sister, who was trying to sell my guitar last week. I looked at my mother, who had tried to break down my door. I pulled my arm free. Music doesn't trade for deceit, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through all their noise. It's over. I walked back into the courtroom, leaving them in the hallway. At 1 p.m., we were all seated. Lyle's table was silent. They were defeated. They had no moves left. Judge Bell entered. She looked at her notes. I have reviewed all evidence, the notarized codicil, the audio from the decedent confirming his intent, the expert testimony, the performance video, the USPS receipt, the audio recording from the coffee shop, the evidence of concealment, fraud, and tortious interference is, frankly, staggering. She looked directly at me. The court is satisfied that Ms. Aspen Rodriguez is the sole and intended beneficiary of the estate of Gustav Whitman. I let out a breath I had been holding for 8 years. However, the judge said, holding up a hand, the room tensed. Mr. Lyle's original objection, while poorly argued, had a kernel of merit. The video, Exhibit A, was performed after Ms. Rodriguez had accessed the safe deposit box. It could be argued she learned the test, rather than fulfilling it innately. Marta stood. Your Honor, the pawn shop was not under oath and was not recorded. The judge cut her off. I am satisfied, but for the appeal that will inevitably follow, I want the record to be ironclad. I want to close the final loop. We have the proof of his wishes in the metal briefcase, the notebooks, the private arrangements, the evidence of a sound and brilliant mind. She looked at me. It was not an unkind look. It was a challenge. Ms. Rodriguez, Judge Bell said, you have proven your mother concealed the will. Now, I am asking you to prove why she concealed it. Prove to this court, in this moment, that you possess the innate understanding your grandfather spoke of. Can you demonstrate, right now, the intent and the specific, unique musical identity of the testator, using the evidence from that case? The room was silent. I looked at Marta. I looked at Ralph, who was sitting in the back row, his hands clasped. I stood up, my voice clear. Yes, Your Honor, I can... My voice was clear. Yes, Your Honor, I can... The silence in the courtroom was no longer just quiet. It was electric. Judge Bell nodded once. Proceed. Marta Quinn did not look surprised. She looked prepared. She nodded to the back of the courtroom. Ralph stood up. He was holding the L5 case. A bailiff took the case, inspected it in a brief, strange moment of legal theater, and brought it to the witness stand. A single microphone, usually used for testimony, was angled toward the guitar. I walked past my mother's table. I did not look at her. I felt the heat of her stare, a mixture of disbelief and pure, undiluted hatred. I opened the case. The guitar gleamed under the flat fluorescent lights. I lifted it. The weight was familiar. a solid, grounding force. I plugged it into the small amplifier they had provided. A low hum filled the room. I stood before the microphone. I looked at Judge Bell. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady, amplified slightly by the microphone. "The codicil, Exhibit A, stated that I must demonstrate an innate understanding of my grandfather's musical signature. The defense argued this was vague. The audio tape, Exhibit B, proved it was specific. I will now perform that signature. Just as I did for the affidavit, I did not wait for approval. I played Body and Soul. I played it exactly as I had at the Riverside Club. My fingers were not shaking. The hunger was gone. The fear was gone. There was only the music, a pure, clean logic. The courtroom, the lawyers, the money, it all dissolved. There was only the structure of the song. I reached the bridge. The room held its breath. I saw my mother lean forward. I saw Grant Lyle watching, baffled. I played the chord. The 13 flat 9 voicing, the tritone substitution. I let the dissonance hang in the air. That beautiful, aching sound of defiance, just as I had been taught. As the note rang out, Marta Quinn moved. She nodded to the clerk. "Exhibit C, Your Honor, the waveform comparison. On the screen, now." 2 images appeared on the large court monitor. The top was labeled Gus Whitman, Private Take. The bottom, Aspen Rodriguez, Live Performance, Exhibit A. They were identical. The spikes of the sound, the frequency, the duration of the note. It was a perfect digital fingerprint. The sound I had just made in the room was the exact same sound he had recorded on that tape. "The peak harmonics match," Marta said, her voice like a scalpel. "The decay time is identical to the 1,000th of a second. This is not interpretation. It is a key, fitting into a lock." Judge Bell stared at the screen. She stared at me. She nodded slowly. "The standard for intent is met. The test is satisfied." She turned her gaze to my mother. "And the USPS receipt confirms the act of concealment. The court is ready to rule." Grant Lyle stood up, but it was a gesture of defeat. "Your Honor, my clients, we withdraw our objections." Amber let out a sharp, broken sob. My mother just stared at the floor, her hands twisting the strap of her expensive handbag, twisting and twisting. Judge Bell looked down at the documents before her. "This court, having reviewed all evidence, finds the following one. The codicil of Gustav Whitman, dated February 2016, is ruled valid, sound, and legally binding. The decedent's intent was clear, precise, and executed through a verifiable, technical test. 2. Ms. Aspen Rodriguez, having satisfied the conditions of the codicil, is hereby affirmed as the sole and exclusive beneficiary of the estate of Gustav Whitman and all associated assets, including the Blue Crown Publishing Catalog and the unreleased masters from Silver Lantern Records. 3. Darlene Rodriguez and Amber Rodriguez, having been found to have engaged in fraudulent concealment and tortious interference with an inheritance, are barred from any claim. This court further orders that any and all benefits, funds, or properties already derived from the estate, if any, be repaid in full to the beneficiary, with interest. 4. This court issues a formal warning regarding the clear obstruction of justice and attempted evidence tampering. This court reserves the right to refer this matter to the district attorney for criminal charges. Lyle had his head bowed. Amber was crying silently, fat tears of self-pity rolling down her face. My mother was just a stone, her face gray, her knuckles white on her purse. The representative from Blue Crown Publishing, who had been sitting quietly, stood up, startled. Judge Bell looked at him. "Sir, my apologies. Your Honor," he said, his voice crisp. "David Gendel, Blue Crown Publishing, with the court's permission, as the beneficiary has now been legally affirmed." He walked forward and placed a heavy bound document on Marta's table. "This is the revised acquisition term sheet for $3.1 million and the accompanying letter of credit, pending Ms. Rodriguez's signature. Congratulations, Ms. Rodriguez. It was done. In the courtroom. A public transfer of power. I stood. I felt calm. Your Honor, I said, my voice ringing in the silence. I wish to formalize my request that 3% of all future earnings from this estate be placed in the Gus Whitman Jazz Scholarship Fund, to be administered by Mr. Ralph Delaney. Judge Bell smiled. A small, real smile. The court recognizes the stipulation and enters it into the official record, a fine way to honor his legacy. Ralph, in the back row, met my eyes. He did not smile. He just nodded, his face full of a profound, painful pride. He whispered softly, his voice too quiet for anyone else to hear. He chose you, through the music. I stood there, my hand resting on the smooth wood of the L5. Judge Bell lifted her gavel. The estate of Gustav Whitman is closed. This ruling is final and effective immediately. The crack of the gavel was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was an ending. It was a beginning. Grant Lyle was ushering his clients out a side door, a retreat. I stood at the stand, the guitar still humming. I looked at the judge. I looked at Marta, who gave me a sharp, victorious nod. I lifted my hand, and I played one final chord. It was not the chord from Body and Soul. It was a quiet, complex, major seventh. A falling interval, a fall, as gentle and as final as an exhale. The note hung in the silent, empty courtroom. I unplugged the guitar. I did not wipe it down. I did not rush. I placed it gently back in its case. A partner, not a burden. I turned and walked toward the main aisle. My mother and Amber were standing by the exit, a final, pathetic roadblock. My mother looked at me, her eyes dead. Amber just looked broken. I looked straight at them. I saw them, finally, for exactly what they were. Small, frightening, irrelevant. I said nothing. I walked past them. I pushed open the heavy courtroom doors. The bright, unfiltered light of the midday sun flooded the hallway, making me squint. I lifted my head, carrying my grandfather's guitar, and stepped out of the shadow, into my own name. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. Please drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. I would love to connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.